Okay. Ja, jetzt haben wir schon. Julia ist Profi. Ich habe so lange mit dem iPhone gearbeitet, das ist echt, war echt, okay. Stell mich vor. Ja.
Tatjana, what was that?
I think it was our train to come here.
I was not in it.
You
On it.
have-
I wasn't on
You
it.
must kind of, how did we come to Rome?
True, you came to
It's
Rome.
just a Japanese train. We were borrowing it for coming here.
But it was not a real train, it's just a painting, Tatjana. Don't be silly here.
Then we are already deep
Yeah,
into it. Is it
from the get-go.
from, yes,
Yeah,
about
yeah. Well, we've had some practice around this table. So
what is real and
yeah,
what is...
yeah.
So we
Not
make a little introduction. So I'm the painter here in Rome, Tatjana Doyle, Rome Prize Fellow, being
I'm
interviewed by
Torsten Rasch, composer, also Rome Prize Fellow. And
I'm Wesley, as you know, and I'm a garden designer, and my title of prize is equal to Rosso the cat.
well,
yeah,
that's another discussion.
yeah.
Yeah, Tatjana, what about reality?
No, we start first maybe to give a little bit of an introduction for these people that don't know the work,
Well, we
How-
could perhaps
the reality.
go to those, let's say, introduce you and go to the stations of your life. When we see things here in the background, which we'll see closer later. Your paintings, the paintings you exclusively painted in Rome. I mean, you didn't bring anything.
No,
And
just a suitcase.
it is. We had many talks about this, about the depiction of reality, about abstract things, and about figuration, which I'm not a painter, but it interests me very much if there is a difference between those categories, if you see there a difference.
This is exactly what you're describing. You cannot enter it. So when I'm saying we're arriving with a train here, then you're saying, but it's not possible, it's only a painting. But so I start a little bit to explain that this train painting is existing of 10 parts of 2 by 3 meters long, and then they're put together, and then I was putting them on the terrace
But the length
to
was
be
what the total
30 meters,
30
then the whole length, and then just with a moving camera on a bicycle, it started to run. That was done by Philip Geist, and he also did the sound for that from a real Shinkansen. And when I was deciding to do that painting, I wanted that you can just walk along and don't have to sit there like to watch a window, but that you have to move yourself. It's the same way why we have this animation now of the painting. And there is the idea of simulating it, because this train at that time when I was painting it, that was 2008, was not existing yet. There were some other Shinkansen, but not this special bullet train. So I had to find out and watch where I could find it, and there were some secret spots also in YouTube where you can see the test, could see the test version when it was running. So this is why I was once saying in an interview, and Eberhard Habekost was doing the interview with me, was saying this is a piece of verschmutzte Zukunft, like the future that is already dirtied in that way. And because I was painting it before it was there. This is my aim, to try to achieve in the paintings that because it's like a spongy thing to grab the material that surrounds me to be faster in the future. Not to be not myself, but bringing it first before other people have this awareness for that.
But that's not always the case. I mean, in the case of the Shinkansen, where you had this new model, we painted this new model, which was not running yet. But when you paint cars, for example, or statues from the Easter Island, I mean, these are things which are already in some way engraved in the human consciousness as some kind of symbol or fetish or...
Yes, but this is different in that way. The paintings, I'm always choosing to apply to objects that are there. I was not inventing. That was Alexander Neumeister who was inventing the design of the ICE that I was also painting, and then was going to Japan to do it there. And the possibility for me is to grab this pictorial sign that is already around and what also is embedded in a certain perception for other objects. So now it's different now to go to the Easter Islands. We can do that later. We can also watch it. But for the cars, I never had an understanding for cars. I could never remember if this is this car or that car. I was just...
But it's a symbolic, I mean, it's quite clear that it's symbolic. I mean, it's not
yeah, but it's not symbolic.
Object,
they are existing.
I mean, it reminds me in Nigeria, there's if you have accumulated wealth normally through illegal activities, and your grandfather dies, and maybe he's never driven a car in his life or any of these things, but you can afford to buy cars or do these things. They go to the banana plantation and they dig a big hole and they buy a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, and you put your grandfather in the front seat in the best suit that you can buy, and then you cover it with ground. And it's the car is not there to work, but it's symbolic of an image. I mean, that's all.
Of an image of what? Of image of desire?
Of wealth, of whatever you want it to be.
It's even with the Ferrari. This is also why I started to paint the Ferrari paintings. The first paintings that I did with cars actually was a mini car, because to show that I also will do small paintings and not only the big ones, because I'm always working with this painting that is a kind of against the representation in that way that you cannot put it in your house so easily, or you just have to build a house around that. So then I was using the Ferrari as a symbol for the car that comes out of the Werkstatt, and then even if you have an accident, it does not lose the value like all the other cars. This was the first step, what also is equivalent to painting. So I did 15 of these Ferraris. Maybe we can show the Ferrari from picture number 3. We can start with picture number 2 first, please. And we end with the film number 6. So the number 2 was right, what was coming, because I just want to show how these paintings
from the
exist. This is actually the Shinkansen that is separated and painted on the floor, and we see all 10 parts. So now we can go to the other one. So this is a montage, but we don't have to talk about this montage, so it's just put on the street in New York. Watch from the top, and there we see how it is when they hang and somewhere. It was in Aachen and Ludwig Museum on the wall. And here it's parked in Berlin at a corner because there was this advertisement against going so fast. We leave it a bit longer, this one, to the people were giving their photos to show that they are dying if they go too fast or dead already, but they are alive. This was a little bit what I'm interested in, what was coming quite close.
Something like Klaus looked at his mobile phone while driving.
Yes. And now we can, no, that's too far. Now we have to take, that's too far, this is a truck, but we go back to number 6, the movie now. And so, because the silent otherwise, we can just continue to talk. So this is why it was maybe quite nice that we have seen the truck before that was painted.
And that's the truck too.
This is not that truck. This was much earlier before I was painting these Ferraris, and here we see the situation where they're put into the truck and then they're put out of the truck, and this was a situation. I will not show a photo of that. We go on with the film a little bit longer, if it's possible.
Then you could show it again.
We just leave the film a little bit, because then we can concentrate that 15 Ferraris at least were going in and out. This was number 6.
But tell us, please, about, I read about the circumstances of that exhibition. That was only for a very brief time, right? Where you put it into actually a car sales shop, and then they were carried out.
So it was in Karl Marx Allee in Berlin, number 36. And we got it for one day because these paintings were traveling to Paris to a show, and then I decided I would love to show them also in Berlin, and decided we make 1.5 hour an car saloon. And the funny thing is also with the Karl Marx Allee that there were no Ferraris in the East or something, so there was not that car saloon. It was a little bit like as if I've opened it by myself.
But it was a toy model store actually to start off, was it not, for boys?
No, it was not toy model, it was some cosmetic thing. I don't remember really. Not cosmetic, I don't remember, but not toys. So now we see back how they're transported in and out, 15
You can play it again.
of them. We should go longer, we should leave. Okay, that's it. Okay, so but we see how the procedure goes, and after this 1.5 hours, they were going back and be driven away. Just for this idea of my childhood, when my parents were going to watch for a car, we were just going sometimes on Sunday to watch which car they might choose, and it was something that was very boring for me. Not to sit in the car and drive with them, but.
But I mean, you don't own a car, and as a German, you have the psyche of what a car is and the symbol of what this is. But it's, I mean, maybe that's what's interesting in painting for you.
I wanted to participate in this possibility to get a relation to that, because I had none, to the object, because it's like this fetish, and this relation to get it, also to turn it around, that I was then, when I was outside and I was seeing a Ferrari, then it was giving me the possibility back that it reminds of my paintings. So I wanted to own, now we come back to this question of illustration or reality, these are my things. I want to just take them away.
Not as an object, I mean, not as a material object. Because that was just something I was going to ask, but you more or less explained it, because I'm quite sure you are not interested in cars as such. So why would you paint them? But you just explained why you do it, to establish a relationship with some object and to own it, but not in the sense of material ownership, more.
Yeah, it's a funny. I mean, I don't know if I mean, you always have a prejudice because I mean, a car is a very strong symbol into what it shows. But I think because we know each other quite well in this thing that. But what is the function that you use such an obvious symbol What is that as a?
It's not a chrism on, also not a chrism on capital or these possibilities. It's the possibility to take desired objects, because there's so much force on objects, to transfer that into the painting, that people could think, oh yeah, this is a Ferrari, this I like, and start to be put away with that, traveling with then the surface, because the surface is not done like a normal car that is enameled nicely and has no scratches. This is why I was showing this picture. When it's laying on the floor, there's a lot of enamel, and I'm working that they get a lot of mistakes in that. Yeah, so to come back to the idea of what painting is. Yeah. Because in the end they're also painted, like a truck is also a painted object, but painted in that way that it has the color of red or yellow or which color, but this has nothing to do with painting. But this very clean surface is a big attraction, but it could be also having, that's why you're asking for the akku, maybe the possibility of a decay, but the decay is not included anymore with these fetish objects. They're so clean.
They're always, in my perception, even the ones who are more or less looking perfectly new in your paintings. I mean, the cars now, they're always flawed in some way. I mean, they have either you do it with a figuration that, for example, that's damaged also, it's after an accident or whatever, or you let the colors run down, so it's you know what I mean when
yes, when it's dripping, when the enamel is dripping. This is because the canvas sometimes gets so heavy with the enamel that some parts are not drying so quick when I then just want to have the glance to see it, and then they just start to run. I mean, I'm old enough now to know when it starts to run, to calculate also where the places are where
but it's also it's an idea of control, because I mean it's also maybe a bad imagination that we have the ability to control everything, that you give you open up to what chance is, and this is what is more unpredictable, because you kind of enter into the space of time where you participate with time, and you leave a little bit your knowing behind. Because I mean, I think it's one of the most striking things that I've seen with you through your process, that you completely disconnected from what it is kind of to have a control of what the plan is. And I mean, it's limited there, but you sort of enter a space where you sort of work within this time of what the material, and this is how you think with it.
I don't know if it's a question of the control only. I think it's more kind of law in that way, because law means gravity, and we know when paint is put, especially that it will just drip down. And if you consider back, then you have taken over a content that means the car, and then it's stopped by dripping, then you also consider that the speed and the car is also stopped by that, or not the car, but then you're back in this question, what for me is a big question in paintings, what gravity is.
But all these flaws are like the dripping animal or the small things which are not right, they are all intentional.
I don't know what intentional is. I mean, this is you can distribute countries and say here is a border, and then there's the next one, and the big painterly matter is always how does one surface hit the other surface. This is for everybody a little bit a question. How do you do it? Are you keeping the borders in that way, what you're defining, or do you give an openness for that? And the openness is also thanks to that material very much, that you cannot control it because it takes its own expansion in itself, and especially even if you put it up then when it's wet, because then you have to take a little and then you roll it and then you can also control it. But this is where I affirm you
it's quite interesting what you said about the gravity, because you did this work Guernica times how many?
7 times.
Seven times. But Picasso painted Guernica for the reason I think we all know, but he painted it flat
upside down
on the wall.
On the wall, yes.
And Tatjana painted it on the floor. I think.
Yes.
And
except for one.
Because you were working in enamel and not oil, and but I mean this idea that the bombs are dropping on Guernica with this gravity. But this is a funny difference between the rip of the Guernica that actually you put the flat surface to, you know, and that's.
But not only that. I mean, if we are talking about that painting Guernica by Tatjana, there's you told us, or I read, I don't remember, that it's actually the idea came to you not through the painting itself, but through a reproduction of it.
Yes. We can show number 11 and number 12, a little bit longer, like that. First, number 11, without interrupting you, get it. So this was the last Guernica that I was painting, where I had the idea just to put it in oil painting and really simulate exactly the same size as Picasso was doing it, and it was done upside down, upside down with a ladder. And I was using this picture now to show it for the falling of the stripping and the gravity, the bombs, actually, because it was this thing from the top. It's called All Quiet on the Western Front. All these paintings have that title. Now we can go to the next one. This is now in Paris in the Picasso Museum, to a Guernica, to a Guernica show last year or 2 years ago. And now I lost your question. I remember now. It was actually around my studio was this pizza place, this Italian pizza place where I used to go, where it was just also as an image, as an advertisement, as a Tellerunterlage, like a paper where you put your plate on, and was also half one part was missing from that, and this was quite crazy for me to consider that that I eat now from a Guernica print idea. Why is that the function now for that picture? It has no dimension, no power anymore, and the idea to paint them back was in fact to reanimate this idea that I cannot reanimate because I was not in war and I was not being dropped by bombs, but just for the symbolic and the power of this special topic.
But this is not always the case. When you do reproductions, I mean, you repaint or you change existing iconic paintings like Guernica. You did this Baltus.
Yes, this is called this is a series. This is called RIP, RIP, like rest in peace, but it's coming from raster image processor, and the raster image processor is the tool that you use when you want to minimize also music, a DVD in the data, when you want to compress data. And this compressing, if it's content-wise or otherwise, I was using, because all the paintings that I was painting after other painters, most of them I did like very much, I was taking from the internet, and so from this compressed thing, not going into the church or into the museum and studying them, just really the fast image that you can have a little bit in this way when it's raining and you have what is it, dimples, Pfützen,
yeah.
on the floor, and then I was always fascinated when then the reflection of a house or anything was just to be seen in this distortion, and
So
this is a little bit the same idea with
like
enamel.
Guernica, in a way. I mean,
Yes,
it's
yes.
quite tasteless to have it as a napkin, Guernica. I mean,
Yes.
in a pizzeria, but still it is
Maybe
reproduction.
not sure it is not definitely for that time and this thing, but it's just carried over as being emptied out for that.
Yeah, but it's
And
always.
this is also a question always with if you could put number 26. There's always the question also. What remains of that, what we perceive, what is reality? We leave that a little bit because this is done after Caspar David Friedrich's Das Scheitern, but it was never the Scheitern, this is the ice
Eismeer,
sea, but the Scheitern, what is the Scheitern in English? Failing or failure.
Failure.
It was named from a curator, wrongly was said. That's why this painting is always connected with it. And so it was standing in my studio, 90-degree around, and there was people there coming in, and then they were asking if this is right, that it stands like that. It was just finished, and then I said, no, it has to go around. This is this rib of Caspar David Friedrich. And then before they were coming with a whole group of academic people into the studio, I was asking them, please, because it was my private space, not to take photos. Then I was turning it around, and then I realized they don't even know the real origin, Caspar David Friedrich, das Eismeer, the ice sea. And so one of them Googled. They were standing there and showing the telephone and saying,
"Look, that's it.
This is original." And the real one is very small, and this is very, very large. And then we were really a little bit. And then the other one said to him, "But you're not allowed to photograph." Because they thought he has photographed mine, and in this compression of this, what I say was this rib, it was just the perceivement is the same one. And then it was completely confusing because I thought, how can we come along what the reality or this picture of reality really is?
I find this hilarious, saying, look, that's the original. This is really, absolutely. Or shall we perhaps go a bit further back, because I suspect you have not always painted with enamel, and you have done drawings too. You probably have done oil paintings too. How did you start? What was the beginning? How actually the question is probably how did you come to paint?
That's a good question.
I think there's two things maybe. I remember that I had to do when I was in primary school, we had to do a Beschreibung, a report on something, so we had to take something. Now we're coming back to the idea of the car, and my parents just got a new car. And then there was all these magazines laying around, very heavily printed and expensive. So I was taking this magazine and describing the car like I had to do it. Then my mother was entering and seeing that I was describing the car that they have just bought. And she said, no, this is not possible. And I said, but, so I had to redo my whole homework. So for that age, I thought it was a very big punishment, because I had not the understanding for that they were maybe, they didn't want to be identified with how much money they have or not, or with car, because it also shows what the people think in that way. And then I had to take another one that was completely boring. And I had also no access to that because the other car was standing in front of the house. So I had a little bit some will to do it. And but the magazine that was laying around for this model was really teasing me, in an image. Also because painting is first the craft that you do it, but the thinking also started with this idea, why can I not that one that is really standing there? Why do I have to substitute it with another one? And I don't know, when do you start? When, or why? I think I was giving up sports in a way. I was doing a lot of sports constantly and had a nice time because I could go for my reality. Nobody could tell me, like with a text, this you cannot do. I could just do it and fantasize with that without having fantasy. I had no fantasy. I was always taking realistic things, and but I was also copying very early by myself, Velasquez and these things. I just wanted to spend time with that seemed to me, for me, very real. This was the start, actually. And then you start and make all mistakes and naiveness, whatever, that never goes away, hopefully. But
well, a very naive question. Did your art teacher saw any of your talents in what you did in your art lessons?
I
Did
don't
he
know.
predict you'll be?
I have to assume what they don't do, that they would watch now. But so I'm coming out of a household when I would have told my parents I go and study painting, they would tell me this is for rich people. But this was also not the question. The problem was that I did not know that you study that. So I had no idea. So then I thought, how can I do that, what I want to do? So I studied graphic design. And then I was also combining it a little bit with philosophy. And then that teacher there, this was a sculptor, he said, you're completely wrong here. You want to paint. You have to go to an academy. And
where was that? I mean, where did you study graphic design?
why?
I know
Where? In Münster. In Münster.
Yeah.
1 year. And then I was applying for the academy in Karlsruhe and in Münster. So I had already the yes from Münster. And then I went to Karlsruhe for the talk. And then they say, what do you want in Karlsruhe? First they asked if I have a yes from Münster. I said, yeah. Why? And they said, I want as far as I can go away, but not to paint like you did. But this was for me quite far.
Was already far.
And then they said no. And then I started in Münster and then quickly left to Düsseldorf and was studying with Dieter Krieg, what was very rich to have had that possibility.
And did you discover early that you, because that's a question I always wanted to ask, why your, or what is the reason for your formats being so large? But you don't, something you can explain later, but did you already start or already at the beginning in those large
in my
canvases?
children's room, And this is quite funny.
To make life difficult for everybody around him.
Genau.
And he's,
not like that. I wanted to have them real. So I was never starting, there was two things. First of all, I think when you're young, you really suffer on lacking techniques. That was what I didn't like. So you have an idea how it has to look like. And then I realized when I don't control it anymore, we come back to that, because you start to control in the beginning. You want to have that leg like that, but nobody shows you how to do it or other things. And then I was painting a big moon on my children's room's wall. And some other, what I could find, like old sheets. And I was not thinking, I just liked it that they were so big that they were putting all the other clutter out in my room.
So of course, size matters in that sense.
It's also when you paint what I also did from a poster magazine from Bravo, nice boy or something. Then you think he's there. I mean, it's quite dangerous what I'm saying now, but kind of that. And then I was starting this graphic design, and there was this. Then I started with enamel immediately because it was cheaper for me. I got more mass of solving that, because this other was quite expensive. like oil paint. And with the oil paint, I did that also quite early to try it, but that was also very slow. It's quite a slow process. This was not what I was thinking of at that time.
You said once in one of our talks that you cannot, I mean, of course you can relate to paintings on the wall, for example here in Rome, but now you do not want to paint for something that hangs on a wall, or I don't remember exactly how you put it then, but the painting on the wall is not interesting for you in that sense if it hangs in somebody's living room.
I think it's wonderful.
But
It's
you
exactly
said that
I mean the window and the precious object in that way. I like it more. We had this talk yesterday with Fra Angelico. It's completely interesting because he painted these things that people had to live with that. They had to. It does something with you when you go there. There's also what churches might have done when you're sitting there. And this was what I'm more interested in, that they surround you and they do something with you.
But I mean, you also, just to clarify the point, because I sort of know what you're trying to say. But I think if you have a sofa and there's a place reserved
for the painting behind
most higher income houses, there's a place for painting, and it's scheißegal what that thing is. But it just, and as an artist, you kind of you if you submit to that, you submit to the failure of your work in a sense, and I think that's what the format needs to be reconsidered. That it's nice that the thing is shown and seen, and it's not that it's anti anything, but it's anti the idea of this sort of pseudo-intellectual higher income.
Painting
eliminates
behind the sofa or above the sofa is more interior design than
it's exactly also behind you. You don't even see it. I mean, this is when you have a TV, you would never do it behind your sofa. You would put it in front of the sofa.
But just imagine put the TV behind you.
Yes.
But you had a very nice thing, because I think it was with Dieter Krieg that he was talking about, and you said no, you have to vice versa to.
There was a collector who was a little bit involved in the scandal with some pharmacy thing, and he was a big collector of Dieter Krieg's work, and then he was saying, but they are so big, your paintings, how can ever somebody put that in the house? I said, no, they have to build, he just built a house, they have to build a house for the painting. And he was completely out of the mind then.
That's relatively great.
We have
a guest.
We have a new guest. This is Paul.
Paul.
Hey, Paul, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Paul.
I am Paul Rasch. I am the son of Torsten Rasch. And I just wanted to ask a few questions about this picture. My first question is, why did you draw it? What made you draw this? Was it on internet? Did you just want to draw it? Did it just come into your head? Why did you want to draw this picture?
So this picture is coming, Paul, because above you there is this round up, what we've seen before. We don't have to show it now, but we can see it later again. This is a very dangerous chemistry that is circling around. You see it here now. Not liters, I cannot say, maybe ocean-wise in the liquid. And one of their advertisement slogans is to say, a touch is all it takes. And my idea was, because it's quite a nice sentence, it's quite striking, to take it away from that. I want to re-own it. I don't want that they also take the nice language to make their products more comfortable. And this is why this is very nice and cozy with this rosa, and this round up is a little bit odd. Looks like some today's sneakers in their design, what you can wear. And would have also the function just to be thrown away then.
So you draw this picture with the color of, like, the color of the rosa, just, and the black and white, just like sneakers.
No, there's not the sneakers, but it also looks like sneakers if you say that, just to have a little bit traces. So I was intending to put it all in white, and then it was going so slow because I knew, so I was just going the white to make it that I do it another day, the other parts that has to be whitened. And everything that was not white then was decided to go into black.
My second question is, why did you choose this one? There are millions of other pictures you could do, but why did you exactly choose this one?
Maybe because of our time that we have at the moment, is we have to talk about what touching is, if we are still allowed to touch, and what we are allowed to touch and what we're not allowed to touch.
And why exactly did you want to do the color? Because you just came into your brain, or was just like, this looks pretty, or?
I was choosing the color. There's also a fluorescent pigment in there. That means if the black light comes out of it, it starts to glow like coming to an internet picture, what you were mentioning in the beginning. It will change its surface in that way that you don't know anymore if it's maybe projected or if it's done by hand.
Okay, next question is, you want this to go out to everyone. You want everyone to know that a touch is all it takes, right? Like, you want this to be seen by a lot of people. Like,
You
so
see it
you want to know that they.
We see it now. You see it. I see it every day. Sometimes somebody else is seeing it.
My question is, would you like it if this was displayed into TV, into the whole world?
No.
It is right now.
Now it is, I don't know if the whole world is watching, I guess so, yes.
Half of it.
Maybe the half of the world is watching, the others maybe are sleeping already in Asia. I don't know, but no, I think the painting has the function to be seen in real and not on TV or on the internet.
And how long did it take you to draw this picture?
Maybe time-wise 6 hours, I would say, with everything. But to bring it to there, to consider these things is...
Your lifetime.
Yeah, already my
Yeah.
49 years, exactly.
And did you edit it, or did you put water on it so it would go away, or did you just all do it in one go?
Maybe we can make another close-up. Yes, very nice. Order in one way. So say
all in one go, or did you just do it? Did you do it in parts, or all in one go? Did you do it 1 hour every day?
No, it has to stand more in the right. Maybe you go a little bit more in the right, then he can zoom in a little bit on you to get the thing. But that's without the basin and all this, it's a bit distraction.
Yes.
If you did all in one go, or
maybe even more. Yeah, more. It's all in one go. In that way, there's a chronology. First the rosa, then the sentence, then the white. I had not the sentence from the beginning, and then the black.
So, did you choose how did you choose the colors? Did you at first use different colors, but then you realized it didn't look that pretty, so you covered it up with some pink and black paint, or did you already know what colors you were going to use for the painting?
The white, the biggest contrast, was a decision for the black.
And why
just
did
for
you
the darkness and for the brightness, just being not there because writings are black, and it humbles a little bit the reading of it, and also emphasizes this idea of the touch.
Why did you do the background of it all pink?
The background?
Yeah, the background is all rose and pink. Why did you choose? You could have chosen orange, you could have chosen blue. Why did you choose pink?
Yeah, because it has more to do with the skin. This is maybe closer to the skin for me than an orange fluorescent or yellow fluorescent. There would be poisoning, and this shouldn't be poisoning, should be touchy and calming and skinny, not skinny, skin-wise, like the skin. Mm?
Another question is, why did you draw the letters black and white? Why didn't you just do the black or just white?
Because I thought the white is also very tender to start with that, because my purpose was, or my intention was, to write it only in white. That was coming in the process to decide to put the black where the leftovers were. I was not distributing the white color yet.
Yeah, and white on some letters, most of them is white. Did you try and even it out, or were you just like, let's just do it random, or did you try and even black and white out?
This I don't understand what you're asking.
The black and white distribution, is it random?
Yeah.
Or
Random in that way, because not random, because my speed and my impatience to go through the letters to make, for example, the O and the T correct. Then I got more impatient because you know what to do it, and then I just thought, okay, I make the surrounding of the design of the letter, and then I can later fill it on with the white. So the leftovers where I was lazy were put in black.
Well, I can't think of any other questions, so thank you for having me. And,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Paul.
But maybe before Paul
Before
goes,
you go,
why don't you explain what you see there? What you've asked lots of questions, but now it's your what do you see?
After I ask all these questions,
Just in a
You have to consider that up there, yeah, is poison.
okay.
It's very poisonous. So one small amount of that up there will kill all all living things in the earth or wherever you put it.
Yeah,
So you have to consider them both together.
Now that I see, after I asked all those questions and the answers, I see that the pink is like the skin, and writing is just, I'm just going to let you know, a touch is all it takes. Don't touch me with the poison, I will die. And then other people will infect it and the whole world will die. Just this inscription of a touch is all it takes.
You have a future. You have a future. Good
As
answer.
philosopher.
You can maybe take over our job. But
Thanks,
very
Paul.
nice.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thank you, Paul.
That was a nice interruption.
Can you pour some
Oh yeah,
more
I'm
wine?
a very bad
Tatjana,
host.
you hold
I know,
the wine
I
from
know,
my
I know.
side.
Yes.
Anyway,
But this is not poison here. This
No,
is,
it's not
the
poison,
opposite.
definitely not. We came up to Düsseldorf, I think,
Yeah.
and you went to the academy there, or to the art academy in Düsseldorf, and studied there with your teacher, and then?
Then I went to New York for the first time in my life for 10 days in '97. Funnily, I was even in the apartment of Karin Sander because somebody else was there that I was visiting, and then I was there, and there were all the advertisements in New York, Calvin Klein and these things, and then I got such a flash that I thought I should go there, because I was also in China in '95 with the painted advertisements, but all these prints, they were so huge, so large, that I thought this is where I have to consider what I want to do. Then I was going with the idea for 3 months to be there. Then I was coming back to Düsseldorf, and then I renovated my whole studio because I had a lot of energy. And when it was finished after 1 week, I decided that I will go now to Berlin. And then I was moving to Berlin, and then I had not too much money, what you can consider, because I was just finishing my studying, and so I was trying to find studios where I have not to pay. And I was ridiculously, amazingly lucky, because I was entering a space. I said, I want to paint, and then the guy, later I knew he was a professor for film in Nuremberg, said, so what are you doing? And I said, I come back. And he was not so often there, but he was again accidentally there. He was really not very often there. And then I was showing him my trucks that I was painting. And then he said, cool, I have a place for you. And then I was painting in the Europe Center in Berlin, next to the zoo.
Yeah.
So I could stay there some months, and I was painting containers there, like this Kipplader, like for the Bauschutz.
Yeah.
And it was also quite funny, because I was in the shopping mall there just by the clock, and went with a rolling stairs up, and then I was always, because I could only paint there in the night, because I didn't want to have the people watching me how I paint. This is something like if someone is watching you sleeping.
Yeah.
And then I heard that they were saying, when they were passing, hier wird renoviert, they are renovating here. Because of these things, not the thing, also there was paint, but this Kipplader, again, this shortcut of the picture, just to consider that these containers are there to contain all the garbage.
When I just try to imagine the Europa, the Europe Center, on what side was it when you go towards or away from the Kaiser Wilhelm Church? Is it, what was it, on the left or on the right side?
It was just in opposite, because we're sitting also now live from, how was she called, Sabine Christiansen?
Sabine Christian, there, this side,
exactly on the opposite.
This blue.
I could always see, yes, and then they were so nice, because then I had to leave, and then I was getting again a studio for free at Nonnendam, further out. And this was, at that time, too big for me, this place. I have no painting of that time. I tried, but I was failing completely. I was lonely there, but it's not a problem. It was quite raw. But this was, I could not take over the space. It had no spirit for me. It was so amazing, because it was quite up in the top, and you could see the trains, the trains, the trams, and the highway at the same time. This was this I could not top with anything. I felt very.
That was before Shinkansen.
That was still in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then I was finding another studio, and so I also had a lot of different studios. And then I was applying again to go to, actually I wanted to go to Istanbul, but luckily I became a joker, because I could not decide. I think, maybe it's not true, but I was applying for Istanbul, and then it was just giving, because it was always my wish to go back to New York as a second choice. Okay, if this is not happening, then maybe New York, like as a joke. And then it came to that I was going to PS1 for 1 year. Then I was going back to Berlin. This was also very amazing that time, because there was this advertisement of the Hammer, of this Humvee that was just introduced by this Schwarzenegger. And they had such a fascination. It was hanging everywhere. And so I again had a construction site outside from my studio in PS1, and these workers, they loved to see the Hammers inside, because they were anyway out in the street, but they were really liking it.
I have a question which is perhaps leading somewhere else, but I can perhaps interpose that now. I mean, I saw those photo montage where you put pictures of, for example, the Hammer in the street, but it's not real. It's photo montage, and I think this is very impressive. I mean, it looks. I mean, the whole picture looks as, even if the people who walk by, I mean, they are looking at it. Of course, they look at something else, but it seems as they were looking at your painting. Is this Is this an idea you had from the start to put those? It's not only the Hummer, you put the Ferraris too, or the Lamborghinis, or other things. Those garbage trucks, and so in real environment. Is this an idea from the beginning to do that?
Yeah. When I was 97, the first time for the 10 days, and I'm talking about all this advertisement, or in China, I was coming back, 95, I got a, what do you say, a stipendium, now we can say, some word of that, from the academy, and I went to China, and I was fascinated by these paintings, so I was photographing them, all the paintings that were hanging, like pop culture somehow, like in the academy, was being painted to sell cars, Europe standards, couches, and so on. So I was photographing them coming back and showing to my professor. Said I was painting in China. Here you see. And then I was liking this possibility. That was the start for me as this thing. And when I was seeing the advertisements in New York. It was also handling me over when I was in this small studio, what I was renting in Düsseldorf in the first time. I just had kind of a corridor behind a bakery, and then it was completely boring. And when I was having this trick with the trucks, we can show one truck that is not painted there, that was painted somewhere else because this was far too big for that studio. That would be number 7. Then this optical illusion was more fun to work there. Then I had the problem that I also had to photograph them. So we have this, and then we can also go, this is important, Seralvis, and then we can also go to the next, to number 9. So just one back here, and there you see it looks like now it's an object or something, but this was a fun that I was developing. So then the problem, how do you photograph it now in the studio? So then I had to bring it out onto the street. And then I was starting to take photos from trucks and also an airplane that I was painting 98 on the street. And when I was in New York, because it's complicated to put it down there somewhere, also from PS1 to go and lay it down just in the backyard, it was possible with a sanitation truck. Then I started to work with a computer to see if I could distribute them.
But if you see the structure of the photo montage or the installation piece, but there's a structure that's repeating itself because. You bring in sort of life to an object that is living in an idea of a painting, but in this photo montage you also dislocating the image a second time over. You've done it first by reproducing the image, which we've saying it's not real, but you do it then again to dislocate it further. And I think that's, and I think do you do that that repetition and that structure? Do you repeat that, and are there more layers of the depth of that?
Yeah, it's a little bit tautologic to do it in that way, but I think what I was saying when I'm referring so much on the advertisements, so the Humvees was really I'm always working from flat pictures. I print it out and go with that. Then you have the object, what is the painting, doesn't matter what size, it becomes an object back, not a car or not a truck, but then you bring it on the photo montage back where the other object is standing because you just replace it. Because I was saying I wanted that then the truck or the Ferrari or the Humvee is making advertisement, is running around everywhere in the city for my painting. This is the idea.
Yeah,
so I want to turn it around.
I mean, also, if you show you have this container piece where they're building it up in this thing. Also, just to see the scale of what, because, I mean, this is why there's a similar structure. If you see this Shinkansen with this size, I mean, you know what the size of
number 35.
Yeah, I mean it's
Yeah, this will also show another very important part of my work, because the how do you say, the Syria,
this is another question.
the
Serious.
not to double, but to paint them as often as possible is also.
That's something I wanted to ask
yes.
Anyway. But what you just said, Wesley, that's taking that image. I mean, or that thing, that object, and or it's actually a subject. If a painter paints something, it's a subject. So, and taking it out of its context, painting it, and then putting it again into the real world, even only if a photo montage. Perhaps you can enlighten me. Because I think painting, or at least figurative painting, it used to be a kind of representation. I mean, it was meant to be representation. I mean, not only portraits, but
the landscape painting was
representation, and then in modern art, representation was neglected. It wasn't there anymore. Let's say in abstract paintings, also there was no representation anymore. So you're painting now things which, or subjects actually, I mean real things. It's a kind of, also I know you would reject the term figurative because it's not important for you any longer, but it is a double negation of representation, I think, because you put the thing, the subject you're painting, you take out of its context, and then you put it again into some context where people would see it in a completely different way. I mean, they would, I mean, if they really would see it, because most of it is photo montage, they don't see your painted Hummer or your painted Lamborghini, but they look at it, if they would see it, it would not be it's a double negation in that sense. I don't know if I can make myself clear.
I understand. I think it's quite. But I think this is also the world that we live in today. I think it's representation is the stones of life that never really change. But the technology changes, and I mean this is politics, and everything is incorporated, fashion and marketing, and I mean it's moving at speeds, and it moves around. But I mean painting is an ancient language, and it's very strange that for me that it can actually still function at that speed in the society that we live at, and maybe some strange text of the death of painting or what this is, but we know that I mean it's I don't see it being dead at all and more relevant.
This is also meaning death of representation, because there is no death of painting. I mean, this is not. We cannot. Sure, it has another function in the world, but there are still people that want to paint, and there is not.
But it's not about representation anymore. I mean, this idea actually is from one of those texts in your new catalogue. I forgot now which one it was. The first or the second text by Markus Reinweg, or the other one by Ulrich Loog. He was writing a lot about, I mean, what painting is, representation, and where you, with your work, would fit in. As I understood it, it is the next step after being not figurative, after neglecting representation, in that sense that you represent in a subject, be it in whatever style, Baroque or Renaissance or Expressionist, it is always more or less representation. And then there was the negation of it. And now, not only you, there are other painters who paint figurative in that sense, that you can recognize something, but that's not the meaning of representation. This is different.
Might be sometimes. I think there are still very good painters that will use that and even can work on this topic of representation very nicely and be very happy to see them. But it's also the language of painting also has its own development. This is my conviction. So I don't mind if somebody has the brilliance to paint that it reminds of paintings that we've seen already, and also going in that possibility. But I think it has only also an own way to construct and act with that reality, what is around us. And this is a lot of technology and kind of positivism in science, and this is definitely not the trees and the birds and the nature. But with this figuration, if you can just have the picture of number 32. Then, so this is also a huge painting,
Pictogram,
3 by 5 meters, and this is a pictogram because I was starting with the pictograms. We can have 27 and then 28, 29, 30, and then 31.
But maybe you can just keep it.
Yeah, keep it. Yeah, we keep it. I say the numbers again. It's no problem.
No, because this is.
We go back
that's
to
a
the we go back to the number 32 and keep it a little bit. So this was starting with the fire extinguisher, actually, the pictograms, this idea, because I was invited to put a show up. I got quite a nice money amount for that in a staircase possibility. And I thought, why do they invite me for a staircase? What does a painter now to do here? Then I was walking up and down the staircase, and then it was just the exit signs and the fire extinguisher. And then I thought, I just repeat that. Same way what we're talking with this tautologic thing. And then they were not fitting because I was not measuring the walls. It was so big, the staircase, that I thought they're fitting. So I was just putting them how they were fitting, what we were seeing with the fire extinguisher. Also in this idea, I mean, I've said it so often already, but what happens actually if you have now the case, because you have this Brandschutzordnung, do you, so is it then the function of a painting to show you, to go out, or to keep the painting, to save the painting, to save yourself? And now with this one, as well, this is called Too Big for You. And I wanted to take that and have it longer because I wanted to tell you, when you're talking about abstraction and non-abstraction, that you only see some lines, not lines, but you don't see nothing, because this is already an introduced world of Otto Eicher and other people that tell us that there's still figuration, but there is no figuration.
But I've seen this painting in real, and what was striking for me about the painting was that in a pictogram you would have you just emphasize the image to the minimum of what the details are. I mean, there's no physical entities that you can start to engage with. But when you see this, and you feel the weight of this weightlifter, and you see the bar, and you sort of see the tension in the bar, because the bar, you can't really see it here, but the bar is slightly bent. So there's a weight that comes into the painting that you would never have as a pictogram, and I think that's it's these. Yes. But again, you've dislocated the image from a pictogram back into life.
Yeah, we can
through the weight of
and also through the impossibility of having two different weights on each end.
Yes, yeah, but and I mean that's a strange thing. Maybe just how we read information.
Yeah, I mean, we can have number 31. So I don't want to interrupt it.
But
we
it
have
also is immediately
this is a film.
recognizable. I mean, those
only 30 seconds.
a few lines which immediately give you Well, that's what pictograms are meant for, immediately to tell you what to do and not to do.
So this is in South Africa, and this was quite interesting there because everywhere, not in that size, were these signs for the people, for the local people, that they're not allowed to sell their harvest.
On the street.
And so that's why I was painting it bigger and bringing it back onto the street with the help of these nice people. And this is also what Wesley, what I want to confirm him. I'm not good with that, maybe yes. That if you emphasize this, then it's more present, but also more ridiculous. So you just could get aware of that you're there, you harvest something, but you're not allowed to participate in the circulation of that. You have to go these rules, whatever is the invention, where you have to bring it and they are allowed to sell it.
But that was actually a pictogram you made for South Africa? Or
I made in South Africa,
in South
because
Africa?
I was seeing it everywhere, and I was also very seduced by the circle idea to have that, but yes. Yeah. And then it was put back there. And I can also, when we have this number 29, please. This is also coming from the pictograms. These are a rare series of small paintings, so the A is missing. Then it's going B, C, D, the E is missing, F, G, H. Now I don't want to show that I might not be capable to know the English alphabet, but so these gaps that are there,
E, F, G,
they were not there, they were somewhere else. And this is called the hat alphabet, because I was painting as many hats as we have letters, and my idea was always that we have that I could have the possibility, like the isotypes or the pictograms were invented also to make a language with it. So instead of letters, you know the B, and then the C, and then the D, and so on, and then you can make words with it. With our technology, would be no problem to program this language that you can really write in that, and even then have a scan, and then it's just translating like another language. But for what perception is for myself is that I would. How hard it is to remember how we are trained for what we're trained to remember the information where the Z is, and or how the Z looks like, or how the K looks like.
But the slight differences in those pictograms, they are of course intentional.
No, yeah, it's like that. If you paint a series, then you want to show that you're not a machine, and then you make the circle, and you pour the enamel, and you make the shoulders, or what you want to call shoulders, and then you just leave it like it wants to be. Or sometimes you were putting the circle because you're not watching on the other one too far down or higher up, and so on, to evoke this mystery. It's no mystery, but to evoke the.
But if you had to if you replace an alphabet by an image of what a letter is, and in some way you're saying that it's impossible to reproduce something as an exact copy.
No, I don't think it's impossible. But there was this one film, I think it was a krimi, where the girl was held by somebody and didn't know that the guy had a computer and was printing out, because she had to constantly do, it was a whole abusement of constantly doing again and again to write like the computer. And she was, in this film, quite good in that, but you will never, how was it called? Oh yeah, I don't know. But it was quite a crazy idea with that. And why, this also means why not liking differences, why having the standard, and why uniforming things. This is, I mean, I wonder how post people sometimes can still read handwritings. I think one day it's over.
It will be gone. I mean, I hardly can read the handwriting of my grandmother. So hardly people in 50 years will be able to read my handwriting. But it's basically, it's just, it's not the same, but it's the like you paint the cars, or other things with those flaws or with those, I mean, with this, let's say, human touch. So you paint the pictograms with a human touch. I mean, they have your touch, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's, of course, intentional.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah,
completely.
yeah,
I
yeah.
also decided also with this, I don't have it here now because it's always an example. Oh no, I have it. Wait, we can see it at least in the back. 28. Sorry. So this is this staircase pictogram, and with the heads, there's a lot of talks about that, why the heads are down and up and so on. And this is then because we are like that. What do you say? Making psychology, but it's we react with that. It's like that we have tears or something there. We see, my God, that sad these people.
You could say, I mean, the one who's going upwards, he's walking or he's going to his own execution, and just with a slight bending.
Yes.
Of this,
but they're already enhanced because the white circles are not connected to the bodies anymore.
Yeah, it's also when you see you immediately ask, how do you pass yourselves on this small staircase? Corona time as well, we know about this social distancing, but it's
very confusing, that one, I think.
It's if you fulfill ourselves all these pictorial developments. So first they're there for the Olympic Games in Tokyo because it was broadcasted on TV. There was a connection why they were inventing that for anybody is possible to read and to discover these things. And now it's a little bit as we are following behind them.
Yeah. Well, we have been with the pictogram in South Africa. So you went after New York and after Berlin again, then you went to South Africa.
No, I was in between. I was in Istanbul and then also in Italy, in Olevano, in this part. But it was always short trips, like 3 months. And and in South Africa, the same, was also 3 months. I was always I don't know, I did not know, I got this offer to go there from a colleague. That was very nice gift, but I did not know what I have to expect. I did know nothing, actually. And it was also very hard with this beautiful light and this complete nature that was around to consider. I think South Africa is not a painting country. I really understand that people, that there's also not the history of painting, and you feel it a little bit because everything is from the dimensions of nature so overwhelming that you don't need this replacement for that. I think everybody likes to watch the trees, the mountains, everything what is there, more because it's a huge country, like a continent, and then it was very hard for me to consider what do I paint here, and this was the first time that I was doing it, that I was going back to my box of that what I've done already. So I was painting again a money truck that was transporting money, because there's also an issue there, and then not then before I was doing this pictogram because I was always passing it. I mean, any crossing there was a pictogram.
And another question which interested me looking through as many catalogs I've seen are those series of things like the dummy series with the Easter Island statues, or of course the cars as well. But let's perhaps go to the
Easter Island.
Easter Island.
Yeah, we go from number 17 to number 28. Slowly. So they're now just what do you say? The reproductions in that way, not in context. I tried to take a lot of pictures from the others that we've seen that were put into a context.
Have you seen them in the original?
No.
No.
So you see, they're quite standardized. When we go to the next one, they're all watching to the right. This is what they all do together. And this idea, what the decay, we say maybe decay, but what the transformation of a stone, this is something that was fascinating me, because it's also a cliche. It's not a cliche at all. I was reading this from Theo Heyerdahl, this book when they were making, that also the culture has disappeared. How difficult it is also to get to people, and nobody really knows even them anymore. There on the island where all these bottom corridors go, and I like to do it very much. I did a big series with them because they like ghosts. Also to paint them was like I really it was funny to sleep after I've done them, because they, what we also said was the pictograms, they coming
Sentinel, yeah.
There's also not
they
an
keep
enamel.
you company even in your dreams, or they keep you company.
Yeah, they were. They were trying to not trying. They were They were following me.
They look to me all. I mean, that's of course what they are. They are in reality they are made of stone, and they're standing there, and nobody knows why they are actually there, really. But they are kind of organless bodies. I mean, they
That's
have
what
no.
Ulrich Log was writing. Yes.
And it is like what you do with them. It's a kind like a playground. You open up there to play with it. I mean, of course, you said you're fascinated by the decay of every, or how the stone changes, or whatever plants find their way to destroy the structure of the stone. But it is, I assume, it's not that you did not paint it in real, in the sense that you now this one is like that, so this one like that. So
no,
I'm
just the cliche.
not at all. So
just
it's
the
your
recognition,
playground with these organless entities. I mean, the variation you are doing in this series.
So when you even, a friend of mine was going to the Easter Islands, and he had the stamp even from that. You have even the outline of these 7 Oyster Island figures, but in the passport. And I was kind of fascinated what they were for, but there was always this idea that they were like Wächter, guardians for the island. When people were coming with the ships, that they got a fear, and I liked this possibility, because it's not clear if it's meant to be, if it's an artifact, but huge. Also, how they came there, who was doing them, or if even the weather was formulating them over this time of existing. That they still carry something, not something. They carry. They carry the time, so the time is still existing in that way. It's not gone. It's not. I mean, we're sitting here in Rome. It's here.
But they are also.
Car cannot do it.
And that what struck me. I mean, looking through your, seeing your work, is that there are so many of those iconic. Images we have in life. I mean, these are iconic images. Nobody, or perhaps not many people actually know what it is, but I think many people have seen it somewhere. It's the same like the Hummer or the cars. Or I remember one, I don't think you have it on your list, which struck me particularly, was that image of Michael Jackson holding his
baby
child
in the
Adlon Hotel. That's what was it called? I had written that down here.
It's called
America Loves Me, or
I Like America, and America Likes Me.
No, that's Joseph Beuys, but I think it's just.
This is from Joseph Beuys.
I think it's just. I like America. I think it's just. I like
No, I like America, and America
Oh, is
likes
it
me.
that
This
one?
is the title of the work when he was going with a coyote to New York, coming with a taxi to and then going back.
But that too is one of those iconic images everybody or many people have seen, and of course into that come perhaps those iconic paintings to you, Rip.
Yeah, but if you consider that we are living in a world of images, full of images. I mean, I don't know. Most of the people
like
just
this, for example.
we come to that as well. Watch Instagram, but you have not even a second anymore for the photo because you cannot watch constantly. It's a very violent feeding actually, because you don't get it as we were always told when you're young at school. You watch a cinema film and how they put the advertisement inside that you don't see it, but then you know you need the new Nike shoes or you want to drink Coca-Cola or whatever. And with this flood of all the pictures or images that we are surrounded with, it formulates us because you don't know anymore what could be your own image. And to talk, this has not a title yet, I don't know, but everybody knows these white hat
wine bottles.
Yeah, they're not wine bottles. They would be beautiful if they would be. I would wish for that. But this is also, so there's these 8 of this name that I don't use. And then there's a number 9. This is, she has already a name, Shaka Zulu. And this is actually from a CD cover from Lil Kim, this music that I like very much. And Shaka Zulu is a little bit the costume that she's wearing. I liked also that a woman can be this Shaka Zulu because there's this film on fighting with other means, with spirits. So the Shaka Zulu is a film about when they lost
he's a person.
one.
He's not a film. He was.
Yeah, he's a person.
Zulu,
yeah, I know.
warrior.
I know this British.
But I just wanted to refer to the
film.
Because we know it as a story. Maybe you from South Africa know the story, but I just know this from the film. But that there's another, there's other possibilities.
Yeah, but I mean, Shaka Zulu actually embodies the idea that you will run into a fire of gunfire,
and we will not be harmed.
No, you will die. But
you will die.
But you do it. I mean, Japanese also had to face this in this idea of the invention of a samurai against what the gun represents. But it's I think this is also maybe what the symbol is for Little Kim in this this idea that even though you can and will die, it's important to do it. You know, and this fear that you have, and this is what the message of fear and repression that we have to constantly run into a sea of fire and for what we believe. I mean, that's.
Is this? I mean, we are in Rome now. So I mean, also in your with those works which you have done here, is just again a naive question: is this space is left empty? I mean, it's not empty; it's pink. Will it stay like this?
Yes, it will stay like that. It will stay like that because this is a contrast to the numbers on the top to have the single in the
you mean the numbers
length of that.
On top there?
Yeah, they kind of belong together. This is 8 of these. I would rather love to say clowns, but they're not clowns at all. And this is she's single. She's not single, but she's number 9. But
against them.
Yes, she has.
She holds the ace. She holds the ace.
Then I see, of course. You said before, Tatjana, I don't know, perhaps you said it earlier before we started this talk, that you came here with nothing. I mean, no paintings, no, not even a brush, nothing. So everything which we see here, and there's more.
I brought a brush for my hair.
Yeah, sure, a hairbrush. That's sure.
Share with your daughter.
But so you have everything you've done here. So my question now, I mean, of course, concerning those works, is also what has that time. I mean, being in Rome with all its art and with your art, what does it mean to you, or how have you experienced it, or how has it influenced you, or whatever you know?
So these were done in this kind of lockdown, this very entschleunigte, beautiful time. That it was not beautiful what was happening, but beautiful in that time, because 1 minute was turning to be 10 value minutes because there was another concentration. But still, I was a little bit differently than normally watching a lot of news and thoughts about the shutdown of the whole world. So the world was becoming a little bit this internet frame of journalism, thinking. This was bigger than normally. I'm clearly always watching a bit the news or reading the news, but not in that way that I was also trying to start to understand what the order will be that we have to face. And so this was done in beginning of April. So all the riots that were coming up were not there yet. And but then, because I think there's a possibility for myself like to act like a sponge, so to take the dirt and the nice soap, the good smells, and I have to work with that. I have not a I maintain, but I have not a conclusion on things, and I just want to throw back what is entering me. This is also not, we had this talk about what is, if it's conscious or unconscious, and I think unconscious is definitely bigger in this possibility, because you also allow more. But this is hard conscious in that way. Or you were saying, you had another word for that.
Yeah. But this is an old topic in painting, from Picasso and many ideas of what the unconscious actually functions in reality, and the reality of painting, especially, because that's the.
Shall I read this quote?
Yeah.
I read a bit in a book Wesley gave me today, Hickey, and there was this quote which struck me, really, which says, Caravaggio, Monet, Warhol, and Judd do not represent the things that they depict. They reincarnate their subjects in an intensified reality. They take a step toward the threshold where the adaptive unconscious engages the world. I mean, the adaptive unconscious is a new term. It's something which actually makes us do everything, and our consciousness is only listening to the adaptive unconsciousness.
Yes.
So he explained that very nicely. But I mean, they say they do not represent the things that they depict. They reincarnate their subjects in an intensified reality.
But here we go. I don't represent them. This would be absolute not my idea. And,
but this is this adaptive unconscious in this call it consciousness. But I was reminded, because we both share love for Franz West, but he was making these adaptives that you participate in.
yes.
And this is a funny, because it brings out the unconscious, that you participate in this object that makes no sense. It has no sense.
But there's also a difference. We're living in a world where we say the disciplines doesn't matter anymore. There's no difference if you're a sculptor or painter or concept artist and video artist and all the other disciplines. And I think any medium has a own language that has to be very executed very precisely and very brilliant in its way, because has also reason that it has developed for that. And for me, when you now also mention Franz West with this adaptive, he's a sculptor. It's always with communication in that. You have to go around, you have to communicate with a painting. You don't communicate. This is something that goes.
But he was also making these collages and these things. I mean, also in this touch. But I mean, he's. But that's a different.
Yeah, but it's not a painting language that he's using. It's still, this is a thinking language, and there are beautiful things that he did with that. But I mean, he was even painting his objects as well.
Yeah, but maybe this is a therapy also of what touch is. It brings out the unconscious maybe in a different way, because it's more. It's easier to get the rational behind if you.
I think the reincarnation, I mean, of a subject in a newly, in an intensified reality, the best example, I mean, in your work, I mean, they're all good examples, but is the Lupa.
Oh,
this is really something which is, again, an iconic image everybody more or less knows or has seen, especially in Rome.
To number 16.
But this is the reincarnation of that image which we find all over Rome in a newly intensified reality, especially in Corona time. I mean, considering what Tatjana, you can explain what after you painted it, this is the process of painting, what happened to it afterwards?
So when I was starting with that, also to take it as a symbol, there was no lockdown or these things so far, then I just wanted to have this most iconic picture that is also drawn into a lot of directions, also politically. And then we put it, it was before the installation, we put it into the, onto the wall with all these people when we were in the lockdown and could not leave. And I loved this idea very much, that it could be on the wall for the people that were going with dogs or for the market to get
or a bit
some
of jogging,
food.
exercise, a bit of exercise.
Or that. So it was also with a black light, where we here see also in the background of also having the possibility to be like a hologram in the night, to appear. And I liked that I could give it to the Roman people in that way, that they reminded of their own city, of their history, of that being. This was very beautiful. And this, it's called Collected Silence, that piece. And it has also the function, in fact, to collect the silence that was outside, because we were not always on the wall and watch what's going on also what the silence, we were seeing it what it is, but it was constantly there.
But after seeing those, what we talked about before, those photo montages, that already seemed to be, I mean, it would perhaps not have, of course, in the Villa Massimo has made it possible to do that, and of course there was this lockdown, and there were even the conditions were even different. But in normal circumstances, it would be probably difficult to put such a large painting somewhere up a wall or on the street. So it almost seemed like a photo montage where you put a painting. So it was actually, it must have been.
But there's also no difference, because there were not. I guess there were a lot of people that were seeing it, but it was also not so present on this big street because of the shutdown. Because people had to stay home. They were not. They could not come and visit it, or you announce and say, "Here, this is up now, and please come." It was either by accident, or you follow a little bit the structure of the Villa Massimo, then you had the possibility, but it was not working with also exhibitions are kind of representation. And I would definitely not have done it. It was really a consideration to put it here into the gallery, also with that light, and just to come up as a hologram only in this blue, but that it had the chance to be during the day with its pastel colors, and then in the evening or during the night, this hologram possibility was very beautiful for it.
Yeah, this is absolutely. I mean, it was really intensified reality. I mean, especially since I would say everybody knows it here in Rome. I mean, has seen that image, and
yes,
but if you just if you have an idea of the Easter Island figure as a sentinel, that I think it's a symbol for this thing. If you're out on the ocean, that you have an image to come back, and there's this thing, and I think this wolf is also a symbol in this idea of an image that the hope, or there's a thing out there. But I remember with Luc Toymans, he was saying something quite interesting, because he said that you can when you stand in front of a painting, it's the only time you can actually get its dimensions and see it. But as soon as you leave its physical space, you have no ability to remember a painting. You can't remember it. It's a magic trick of what painting.
You have it on your phone then.
Do you have a connection between the Easter Island paintings and this she-wolf?
I think they're very much connected. But plus also the she-wolf is also connected for me with this Rayella piece. What is this overpainted Guernica piece, or quite on the Western Front. I think this is a little bit on this reduction of the how the forms work and how they tease you. This is different than some other paintings that work much more in this overfloating of the material, maybe. And
but I just to maybe go one further on this thing, because if you can only be present with the painting when you with it as a viewer, and but for you as the maker, you also have to be present in the making of the painting. And but it's how do you see somebody looking at the painting as opposed you making the painting? Do you consider an audience of a painting, or is it just the act of making?
No, it's not the active making, because I assume a life or mystery or violence, poetry, anything, an Abgrund on a in the painting that can go and travel by itself. This is how I what the presence is, what they have. But I don't assume. I don't know. This is why it does not matter for me if there's a lot of people or less people or something. But I like this idea very much that maybe that you do and spend time with it. That you don't have to live with that, but I also don't want to live with these people down the top. But that they have no message. I don't want them to be message. I want them to be a piece of nature, life, or something. Even in this reproduction of these images that are floating around. Maybe they change. I don't know, nobody has to be changed in that way, but they do maybe something.
But would it be like with the she-wolf, the lupa, which has been exposed outside, would it in those, I'm coming back to this now because it just interests me, would you have liked to have those photographs, I mean those photo montages where your paintings are put into just on the street. Would you have liked that to happen for real? I mean, in put those
to put a hammer in front
hammer
of
paintings,
the on the no, don't remember the corner, this famous one where this Vuitton building is.
Oh yeah.
New York.
Is it on the taxi, on the cab, or what?
Yeah, this is a other painting, but there's no, not definitely all of them. Some, sure. I mean, I was saying it in the beginning. What it would be, this was always my dream. Maybe it's a little bit mad in that way, that I could sit in the bus in New York and I don't have to see advertisement, but I could see, must not be my paintings, but paintings that do something with me, even if it's this roundup, but because the formulation is different, and that you that you're surrounded by that.
But you're surrounded by nonsense, in a sense of nonsense. I mean,
yes,
this
exactly.
Is
where it's not the image.
start,
please buy Roundup or don't buy it, or touch is all it takes, or this is something that leaves it open to you.
But then in this nonsense, your senses actually start to be activated in a.
For me, it is like that. I don't know if it's for other people like that, but I think so. Yeah, this is. I don't know what nonsense is. I mean, poesy or poetic things. They're also kind of nonsense, but they're the most important things. What can be for people, but they're not there to tell you, please turn left, and then you go straight up, and here is forbidden to smoke, and so on. This is
not forbidden.
This is another thing.
Yeah. And do you think you could put this Rembrandt piece?
Yes.
This
number.
It's quite a hard thing that you can rip Rembrandt.
23.
Only Tatjana
Number 23.
can.
If you rip Picasso,
This is now hard to see in that way, but this is why I was choosing that photo. This was a space in Berlin, Ozean. This was a kind of an open space run by two very nice females. So they had this cage that nobody could go and get the exhibition, but on the left we see snow because on the bottom there was a gap. So the only possibility to see into the room was actually through the gate, through the prison gate. And then they were asking me if I want to show something there. Then I was bringing this, I call it Picasso pieces, Picasso, I don't know now, it doesn't matter. And it's a rip from Rembrandt with this woman that's standing in the water and lifting up these sheets, if you can see it, through the bars is behind. It's also 3 meters high. Rembrandt's piece is a little bit smaller. And I
bigger.
was...
Just
it's bigger. This is now qualification-wise, yes, but sure, much bigger. So then the snow was coming and going to the, without reaching that painting, it was just standing by itself.
Yeah, I like the idea that you can also see a painting through a cage, and it's not just the cage, but it's also this female cage and what the water is, and it almost looks like you have these. As a slave, you have these shackles on your legs, and this is also what the water represents.
It's actually like you can see how an iconic image becomes another iconic image in itself.
Yes.
I mean, this one is in itself an iconic image, but taken from another iconic image of the Rembrandt.
Yeah.
That's and the other one, that one.
Yes, and then we can go to the. Is it the next one? The next one. This is number 24. Yeah, this is hard to see. I don't know where the rosa has gone to, but it's now very contrasted. This is the rib of James Ensor. I don't know in English. Einzug nach Brüssel. What's
Yeah.
it has an English title.
Entrance into
yeah,
Brussels
yeah,
or something.
Yeah, the
the
welcome,
religious
the ceremony
word of that.
into Brussels.
And putting himself there in the middle. I mean, this is not now. The painting of Ensor is amazing, and I think it's in the Getty Museum now. But I was deciding to go for that piece. What is also very iconic and I think a very important piece of Ensor and of the art history, because I was also trying to challenge myself to go for a painting that is not having one thing that is iconic, like a big shape or one form that is insisting on all these little details that you cannot override, like with the Oyster Islands, these details, they can sit there or there, it shifts there, but there you have to really take them a little bit to put it together.
But the original size from Ensor was plus, minus what?
This I forgot now.
Okay,
I was right. I mean, I don't. I've never seen it in original.
But this is bigger or smaller than
smaller.
This piece is
no. This is bigger. This piece is bigger, or the same size. I'm not sure. No, I think I did it bigger. I can watch it up. Emilia, I have it here, but
no, you don't have to. But
I remember that large painting. I mean, in Villa Borghese, in the Sobinski room, the Polish room, where was this huge painting of where was it the Poles defeating the Muslims in some battle, and it took up the whole wall of that room. And there were a few other smaller ones, but that was really huge. But no, it was well.
It
was about the roundup size. Yes, but a bit extended on the top, a bit higher. Well, that size. But it's quite exceptional. Having,
I mean, scale does change everything. It's
we had this already. There were two other things. I mean, Wesley, you have perhaps even more, but two other things I wanted to briefly talk about. One was about our common friend, Eberhard Havekost.
That's quite a nice thing to say, that we can have a common friend of
yes,
Eberhard
we have
Havekost.
we had a common friend because he sadly passed away last year. Much
too
early, yes.
Also in a very high peak of very crazy good works that he left in the studio, what we had the opportunity to see. Unbelievably good,
this was really
But you were, he was a very good friend of yours. Tatjana, can you tell us something about him and how you met him and how?
Yeah, it's quite rare because normally artists, it used to be like that in the past that they hang around and spend time together and discuss. But we met, I always mix it, I think 2003. I met him before once in ICA in London, but I didn't know him yet. And we had a very interesting talk on paintings, and I was really loving very much that he had also this deep interest how to not only to talk about painting, but to take it real, to go with that. And we were constantly having these talks about that over years. We were also at some exhibitions together. Nicely, it was a lot of times also him who brought me into some exhibitions. We did also one exhibition together that Ulrich Loog was curating, and we were always with a lot of discussions with it, and not for saying, yeah, this is good and this looks good, very precise, and he has a very had a very different knowledge than me. He was kind of, so they had paint at home. I paint the painter. He was coming regular and giving them some drawings that his mother obviously has thrown away at a certain time. But it's very different how our education was coming from. He was coming from the East. I'm completely from the West. And it was very beautiful in this exchange.
Yeah.
And this is also, we had a special thing when we were in the air, with we were flying to Sao Paulo, Korea, or Miami, whatever places there were around, and then we were talking things that were never being touched anymore than in the air. This was private talks, but this was only for that, and
only in the air.
Portugal and these things, but yeah.
Sounds like Mr. Haverkost.
He was
And I mean, bar 5, what we here
established.
nicely established with around 5 people, but with 3 columns. This was also a little bit funnily what we were doing in Mysliska in Berlin. We were always meeting on, not always later now, the other 2 years, not so often anymore, but on one day we knew it was around his studio, he's there. And
yeah, but Eberhard, he made me understand South Africa. He was the...
You, Wesley, who
really
is South Africa? He made you
I
understand.
saw
yeah.
he really, but this was... And he is white as well, so but he was... but he had... he was not male or female or black or white in these things. He had... a generosity that was open to everything, and there was nothing. It was freedom, just freedom.
Yeah, it was quite funny, even if you consider his paintings.
Yeah.
I remember when he was putting up his exhibition in Duisburg, he was telling that a museum man, a curator, was coming and saying, they are so female, your paintings. Yeah. And for me, it's people say the opposite, and I don't know what it is actually.
They say you're so male, or what?
Yeah, because they're big, maybe this is that, and not fine and raw in that way, but rawness is not the big whatever.
But he was also, the strange thing with Eberhard was that painting for him was ultimate in some ways, but music for Eberhard was maybe ultimate in the thing, and maybe that's why you also have shared.
I mean, the music the music he appreciated after we've been together in the boys' choir was different from the music I appreciated. But I remember a friend of mine who told me the story. He met him on a train from Dresden to Berlin in the dining car, and they sat there and they were talking about what's now on in techno or so in club music, and Eberhard wrote him a long list of everything that's now cool and he should listen to, and that's really, so he had a
But this is what he was doing also when I was coming back from New York. After this 1 year, then I had shortly another studio, then I went into that studio. I was staying quite long, where I painted all the cars. Whenever he was coming, he was bringing me CDs. He was constantly bringing CDs, and so I eliminated my own music collection completely, because I also understood the way of the, not the choreography, but also of the survey and the rhythm, how what's also part of his painting, how you go with it. It's only like pop music.
By the way, I mean, it's I know it from not some, but 1 or 2 other painters, that they always paint with music. played very loud in the studios. Did he do it, or do you do it, Tatjana?
He did it, but I'm not precisely sure because I was never watching him while he was painting. We just once did a piece together in Korea, like a live piece, but excluding everybody else, just him and me. There we had no music, definitely, but his studio was this music listening place. And I was always listening to music when I was starting painting, when I was young. This was a little bit the connection to travel also. Then I was becoming very radical. I also had not the means. Then I was putting in Düsseldorf, I had a TV in my studio. So I always had a TV that was just running, and this is obviously more about listening voices. And also had never a chair, was only a beer crate where I could sit on. And I started to listen music, then back. Then there was a long time with silence. I tried to be in silence, but then you fall a little bit into your own, maybe into emotions or like some things what I didn't like. So then this was a very short period. Then I swifted over and got the whole stereo thing there, and now it's it's constantly with music, and it helps me also a lot because I also don't like some music when I go with a special piece. Then it's not possible.
And you need different music.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you like FX Twin, for example, and if you go with this flow, and then you have to concentrate on other things there, then it disturbs me.
Yeah.
But I think it's not listening as in listening. I think
it's a coldness.
No. But I mean, it's also it's about consuming. It's consuming.
No, it's also the atmosphere. It is consuming, but it's also the coldness, especially that music what I'm listening to that enters in that space.
But that's for Eberhard. I mean,
he was not consuming it.
No, he it's pure consumption. Yes. That's all it It's the information, like
put
reading.
oneself into a certain state of mind, and which is, of course happens not while you're sitting there and listen to every tiny detail in the music. It's about creating a certain
also
kind
to get
of
away from
atmosphere.
yourself. This is also what it does. It also takes you away from yourself.
Yeah, sure it does.
It's like to be very far away from your old day or whatever.
Rest in peace. Eberhard, we miss you.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to ask before perhaps we get to our final question was Rome. Tatjana, how did you experience Rome? Now, not in your studio. How did you experience it outside? What in the time when it was still possible to do so? Now it's possible again. But what does it mean for you? All this heap of art, which is burying people.
I think Rome now, after the silence, especially, it's extremely noisy. I'm really shocked how noisy it is. I think it's more noisy than Berlin.
It was before,
Yes, but I got it maybe also with this gap that was there to realize. Then I'm always reminded of this lifespan that we have, that we know is limited, can be over when the camera is off or now or something, that it does feel so good to see how long the existence is of something that shows you how tiny you are. This is something what is very present here for me, and the art everywhere, and this is exactly what we were talking before in another means. It's very vivid, it's very alive, it's beautiful. I love to constantly go to the Pantheon or to see the Berninis or whatever, a lot of things, because it infiltrates into my mind, but infiltrates because it's normally there. I see it more than a McDonald's or something, and this is quite nice.
That's really
Yeah, one column from this pantheon was it's Egyptian black granite, 2,500 miles. I mean, 12-meter long piece of. You have to get a piece of stone that long first. Then you have to make it kind of round. Then you have to transport it 2,500 miles. I mean, it's in this society of what we live. But you have to believe in the gods to achieve that. Yeah,
well,
I mean,
that's your choice.
I mean, it's. I mean, it's kind of superhuman in a sense. It's
but
beautiful.
I really in my not so young life, I really still. I mean, I'm always learning things, but I especially learned something from you, Tatjana, what you said about. Really looking at paintings, of course, about the story behind it. Of course, those, let's say, the Sistine Chapel, there's in every detail there's a story, and I don't know all of them, but I know some of them, what's going on there, what's happening. But you said once you may know the story, but you're not interested in it.
Yes, I
you look at different things, like at the movement of the colors or the whole thing in itself, but there's no need whatsoever to know the story behind it. And I really, that gave me...
I think that this is not completely true in that there's no need, because if you...
sorry to interrupt you. It was actually not about the Sistine Chapel when we talked about it. It was about in Villa Borghese, the Bernini, where I forgot now. Daphne turning into a tree when Apollo is chasing her, and that moment where she turns into a tree. And you said then you didn't know the story actually. I mean, what's happening there? But I knew the story, but it said it's not important, and I found this.
I also forget these stories. I mean, everybody learns a kind of art history, especially when you're going into studying and you watch it that. But I was always, I could say negatively about me that I was never having this art history reference of that. It was boring for me, but I had a thrill to watch the paintings, and there was never fitting for me in that way. I mean, even with Goya, there's also some stories from other things. I'm very much looking for the thrill and keeping it, because the stories help you, and that's why I think they are necessary, because they help you that you can follow the painting, that you can start to understand it. But for me, it's more interesting to watch where did the painter start the painting, or even if he had the story behind it or not. And also had another function in these times, because there was no TV, there was not these things, and I think stories are very helpful and a very good territory to understand things, not only painting. I mean, painting also is a medium for the mind to develop or to.
But as this idea of a narrative, if you approach something with no idea, then you see something for what it is. But if you have a story and then you approach an image or an object, you're already corrupted in the reality of what you see, because you're not seeing it. You're seeing it through a prejudice.
Through some predetermined thing. Yeah.
But I mean, but there's also, I mean, animals and birds and all these things also do that all day long. But this defines us as being human, that we have a story, that we see something and we can go a little bit further than just what our senses are. But I think that you need the story, but you also have to have your innocence of being able to see something without that. And I don't think it's never one-sided, but It moves between.
No, it is
that,
probably. I mean,
film,
it is. I find it that actually in my. I wouldn't say now ignorance or in towards paintings. I mean, I look at them as a non-painter whatsoever, and I appreciate to know what's going on. But actually, what I say about music, I mean, what I said yesterday, there are not all the time, but mostly there's some kind of story behind what I write, but it's not necessary to know it. Only I have to know it, and it's I do not assume that anybody who listens to it knows the story behind it, but I just want them to be captivated without knowing it, so it's not necessary.
But if I can say it differently, that the means of painting, composing, and writing have. So if you take a child, this was what Roscoe was saying it in his writings. It was very fascinating because he was teaching children as well, and then he said it's so easy. You give a child, so any child once, even if it's an iPad, starts to make some lines and forms a reality on that. Then you lose that because you learn the alphabet and you have texts. And then the stories are coming, and then it's not so interesting anymore. And some stay with that, and some not with this drawing or painting. And Roscoe was saying that when you give them the task to paint a mass of people, a lot, like really uncountable people, then they will just do it. If you tell it to an adult, he will not be capable of doing it.
Yeah.
And then you see there is a different idea of
Perception.
also in its own development of the language.
Right,
I mean the language of the image language, also the image language in from medias, from painting that has something to do with touch or skin, and text language and the music language. They have different depths in themselves, and they can also develop. And I see more and more for myself that sometimes I'm told things that I've maybe read 2 years ago, but I would never remember that anymore. And I'm not even knowing that I've ever known them. And then I watch back, and then maybe another day when my focus is different, then I think, it's true. But this is, I don't mean personal things, just from films or books, or I have, and I need this for myself to lose these things, because I want to be the athlete for painting and not for this kind of text-based things, or I don't know. This is why I was saying that that I don't want to. I'm not interested in the story. I mean,
that's a good.
Yeah, this is why you're my wife, Tatjana.
now it's out. Nobody knows
don't
that.
believe in the story.
So, shall we go now to our... we will not do every question. There are some embarrassing ones.
Is it? You're... Okay.
No, we are not doing every question.
But I need a cigarette before. Maybe,
so yes, of course you should have...
Wesley is so nice.
So do I.
Because you injured your hand while riding the bicycle today.
Yes.
Collecting the wine.
But it's going hopefully better.
There's some in there which you didn't ask me yesterday, which are quite interesting.
Yeah, but this is a thing that we don't have all the same questions, because
that's
this
good.
is what I was why I was so absent on the bike, because I was thinking.
The most awkward, definitely.
Yeah, we'll see. It's like a intelligence test a little bit. This is what is making me a little bit nervous.
I do one and then you do one.
But Wesley, it's up to you which to choose. I would certainly not choose a few of those questions. But I start and then you do the next.
Yes.
I can start already while Wesley is
Rolling.
rolling.
Oh, you need a cigarette to think.
No,
it's-
I don't have to
it's-
think. It's not about thinking.
It's the same question you put
distraction.
to me yesterday first. What is your idea of perfect happiness?
Brilliance.
Brilliance. Okay, Wesley.
Yeah. What is the trait you most deplore in others?
The trait.
The trait,
What is
the
it?
thing the which you do not like in others.
Yes, lie. Lie.
Lying.
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 Which living person do you most admire?
Wesley.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
6 is a nice one.
Yeah. Yeah, that is. What is your greatest extravagance?
Concentration.
It's that's essential. Isn't it? Extravagance. What is your current state of mind?
Smoking.
On what occasion do you lie?
Always.
If you were to die and come back as a person or a thing, what would it be?
Bird.
Bird.
Mhm. Or bicycle. But that's joking.
What are your favorite names? With the S. Yeah.
Now I have to do the same like Torsten because otherwise I get I get no dinner anymore tomorrow from my children. So Kaspar and Gretel.
Good. Where would you most like to live?
Maybe the circumstances, how they are, and the luck that I have there. I would love that the Kunstakademie Karlsruhe would be the Kunstakademie of Rome with all the same creations.
Where would you like to die?
Where? Or
Mexico.
Where? How would you like?
How would you like to
But
die?
why don't we make?
Where?
Where
Where?
We can make two
Mexico.
questions.
You can change it.
Yeah.
Mexico.
And how?
I want to walk to Mexico. And then I want to come in there, and then I want to
Just
finish there.
fall into the ditch next to the street.
No, not one step, but this would be the completion.
So I had two. So you get space. You get two.
What do you most value in friends?
Trust and generosity.
And who are your favorite writers?
I definitely love Raela from Cortázar, but I've read all books of Strindberg with fascination when I was 22, Nabokov as well. So I love Kafka. Yes, that's it.
Yeah. What is your most marked characteristic? Characteristic.
My what?
Yeah. What is your most what you identify?
Sticking out characteristic.
Energy.
Energy. Yeah. Who is your hero in fiction?
Tom Sawyer.
What do you most value in your friends?
Das habe ich schon
Oh, yes,
Oh,
sorry,
yeah,
but
that already. Yeah.
Yeah, good. But what was your answer?
It was
Trust
right that you were
and-
asking twice because I was giving two answers. Trust and generosity.
Trust and generosity.
So you can ask another
Oh
question.
yeah. What is your motto? What is your motto? It's very Roman, that question, in a way.
Respect.
Respect. Mm-hmm. But actually, that's the last question. But
Yeah.
I really wanted to know what. There are other things I want to know. But what is it that you most dislike?
How to say it? Mediocre.
Mediocrity. And of course, we can make questions up. What is your favorite composer?
Yeah.
Torsten, Rasch. I got a good access to your music. But we're not here to make these funny games. I really got a new access.
Yeah. Since I know you are not actually a follower of the contemporary classical music scene, I appreciate very much you had to listen to so much of my music to conduct
No,
the
it's. I
interview.
mean, this is your classical, and this is the world that we live on. I mean, this is.
One more question, because I found it very hard yesterday to answer. Who are your heroes in real life? I mean, in nowadays, in today's life.
Heroes.
Or whom do you admire?
I can only answer the abstract in that form because I admire these persons that put a lot of effort to change our order and in our living structures. But to start with the person, I don't believe in the cult of persons as heroes or not. I have problems to
Very
consider
wise not to believe in
Yeah.
cult.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I need the toilet, so I think it's about.
But
it's a
we
good
can
timing,
finish with
yeah.
one painting that
Yeah.
our faces go a little bit away, and I just explain, and then we just put it off and say goodbye to all the patient people to join us, or the later people, not today, that will join later. Number 10, and I want to finish with number 10 because this is a painting that I was doing in 2009, and we are not finished in that way because our evening will continue this night and tomorrow for the last time for these 5 days. And this is a painting that I was painting 2009 and finishing last year in Berlin with a background. And because I did the background, I was deciding to cut away the background and just have this typhoon fighter and animate it in the clouds with a sound that is to be seen today and tomorrow at 12 o'clock here on the wall of the Viale Aprile. And I don't explain now the contents of that because
It is frightening.
Yeah.
it's very frightening, yes. But it's also not the corona
But with the
mask.
sound, it makes it less frightening. This is the crazy thing, actually. Oh.
Yeah, the sound is this E major from Pyeongchang, from North Korea, where the people are woken up every day at 6 o'clock since 2004, or I don't know, I forgot now
To
when,
go to work
2002.
or to make
And
their morning exercise.
every evening at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
And we have 10 minutes to listen in Rome to remind us that we are not only living in peaceful times.
Yeah. We do not.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank
everybody.
you too.
And goodbye.
Goodbye.
Till tomorrow.
Yes.